Hey everyone, Chen here, bringing you guys another video. Today we are going to do a video I have never done on my channel for Akshan, surprisingly, which is a rune guide, and then also a very basic generic itemization guide, just so you guys kind of understand or start play testing around and have an idea. I do recommend checking out my top 3 builds because I basically just imported, but I wanted to make it a combination of a video just so it's an easy watch. With that being said, let's get started with the rune guide. One thing I'd want to quickly mention is Akshan is actually insanely flexible in both runes and itemization. As you're going to see throughout this video, I will personally give you what I go and then reasonings behind it, and then also what other people go. So without further ado, let's begin. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to smash the like button. Alrighty, the most classic basic rune that you can go on Akshan is this PTA setup. This is your stock standard most damage while having survivability. This is the build, this is the rune page that basically everyone used to go back in the old days, and it's still very good to this day. There's some optimizations that you can do based on solely on preference. There is no math whether it's better or not better, it's literally preference. So I'll go over that right now. You can take Triumph over Presence of Mind. If you find yourself not needing mana and finding yourself getting a lot of early kills, Triumph is very, very good. Itemization or optimization for Legendary, there's not really any. Some people take Bloodline, but I would not recommend it. I think Alacrity is just infinitely better. And then there are optimizations here. For example, if they have a lot of tanks, you can offer a cut down, or if you are going a very glass cannon full heavy damage build, I've seen some people go Last Stand just because Akshan is pretty good at skirmishing with low HP, just because he go in, he resets, he's going to be low HP from, taking damage, and then his second E can do a lot of damage. But once again, this is my regular setup, but there are stuff that you can try around. Now, the green tree secondary is, in my opinion, the most effective and stopping burst. So if you're against a lot of assassins, a lot of bruisers that can just blow you up, this is definitely going to be your go-to. It's going to be the green. There are going to be, once again, a lot of optimizations. Shield Bash, Bone Plating is a staple. Everyone used to take this, but recently we've been seeing times have changed where people have actually stopped taking Shield Bash. For example, you can take Demolish if you're into a matchup where you can get a lot of value from hitting turrets, or a lot of people have been just going Overgrowth with Bone Plating. Both are fine. And then there's also cases where you can go this if they have a lot of CC. Rarely though, Akshan doesn't really care about getting CC'd. If he gets CC'd, his E doesn't come back to cooldown, right? So CC he kind of just ignores it. So this is probably optimized, and then these are probably the two. And then if they are extremely heavy on poke, but you still feel as if you need the green tree, Second Wind is viable as well. So something like this you can do. And then if you want to just go for full-on scaling, which is kind of more aligned with current Akshan itemization, you can go for this. This is just full-on scaling, being tankier, and it synergizes pretty well. Next tree we're going to talk about is Sorcery Tree. This is very popular in Korea. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I do need more playtesting before I can say it's bad or good. Most people are running Absolute Focused. No one's running anything from the top. No one's really running anything other than Absolute Focus on the secondary. And then this one, it can be either Scorch, or you can take Gathering Storm. So if you want to play a little bit more towards early game, you can go Scorch. If you want to play a little bit more towards scaling, Gathering Storm's obviously going to be really good. I think the whole premise as to why they take this tree is for Absolute Focus, which gives you an insane amount of value, as obviously you're entering the fight camouflage, and then you're going to be full HP, you're going to do that extra damage, and maybe that equates to a kill, right? So a pretty viable rune page that, once again, you can test around, see what you like. If you like it, go for it. Next tree, which I believe I'm the only one running nowadays. I checked all the popular Akshan mains and they actually don't run this anymore, but I personally still one of my favorites. It's going to be Eyeball Collection and Treasure Hunter. This is your stock standard snowball rune. If you find yourself getting a lot of early kills, getting a lot of good roams, you are going to get accelerated, and this is just going to blow up the game. This is why it's personally my favorite, because I do like to snowball, although Akshan currently struggles in a lot of matchups, and maybe this rune page is just a long forgotten rune page, but you can go this, and then also into a lot of aggressive matchups, you can go Sudden Impact with Treasure Hunter, or Sudden Impact with Eyeball Collection. This is generally when you start E for you to get a level 1 cheese. With sudden impact, you're going to do quite a bit of extra damage. And last tree that isn't really talked about, but some people do go it, is just a scaling efficient rune where people go either Magical Footwear, Cosmic Insight, or Biscuit, Cosmic Insight. I personally don't recommend this because I think Akshan needs his boots early, so waiting for 12 minutes is just really, really bad. But just know it is there for you to try. And then obviously the mini adaptive trees always go attack speed, always go adaptive force, and then these can depend based on matchup. Alright, there we go. We talked about the secondary trees. Now let's focus more on the primary tree with small things that you can change. For example, Fleet Footwork you can take with all the secondaries that I've mentioned. Fleet tends to be performing a lot better with either Resolve or Sorcery, so keep that in mind. But when you want to take Fleet is basically into matchups where you cannot kill. This is matchups you want to survive, you want to scale, and you want to make roams. That's where Fleet's going to be very effective versus PTA. So for example, in a lot of mage matchups, Fleet is definitely very viable. And yeah, obviously secondary, everything I mentioned before. A simple rune page could look like this, could look like this, could look like this, right? Any of that combination will work. Now, I do want to preface a very niche rune page that you can take in a very little amount of matchups. Basically, if you play Akshan top solely, you can take this matchup. It's going to be your first strike matchup, or your first strike rune. I would not recommend taking this mid lane unless you are against, for example, a Galio, which I think this rune page is perfectly fine. It is basically your optimization for scaling, ultimate scaling, and a lot of gold income and stuff like that. So this rune page, you are actually taking Magical Footwear just because there's literally nothing else that's good here. And then you can take Futures Market or Biscuit Delivery, and then yeah, only take this. I only see McGung taking this against Cassante, and yeah, very niche. Do not go this. Basically, precision is always going to be Akshan's best friend. Alright, that is it for the rune guide. Now let's move on to a real quick itemization guide. Like I said, it's going to be really quick. Alright, so I made a very quick item set for this video. It's, like I said, I already made a video about this, my top 3 current builds, and they still hold true, but I want to go a little bit, just make it in one video. That way it's a very easy watch for those that are looking for runes and looking for items. So, starting items, these are the 3 viable starting items. Very rarely you can actually go Doran's Shield, but it's like 1 out of 100 games, so I'm just not going to include it. Longsword is your start for the most aggressive start that you can go. Also, Longsword spikes really well and curves really well into your first item, which is something to keep in mind, but you are going to be very vulnerable, so take this with caution. Take these into matchups that you know you can win very hard. Doran's Blade is going to be your staple start into a lot of matchups where you need the extra HP, and the Omni Vamp helps out a lot as well, and it's just going to be your bread and butter starting item into most matchups where you need the HP. I think I said that, but you know, it basically go this whenever you don't want to go Longsword. That's kind of how you think about it. And then Coal Star is actually rising in popularity just because, once again, I mentioned earlier, Akshan's identity has slowly shifted into more of a scaling champion, and this is going to help you scale really well. So go this into matchups where you can't really interact with them and you want to scale. Viable boots, this is obviously really basic Berserkers if you want extra attack speed, and then any defensive if you want a defensive stat. There's no real, like, conclusion as to which one is better in terms of offensive versus defensive. It kind of depends on just whatever you want that game. Now moving on to the first standard build. So for example, if you don't know anything about Akshan itemization and just want a very basic itemization guide, this is going to be it for you. This is the stock standard crit build that I've been going majority of my games. Kraken, Collector IE, it's going to give you a strong 3-item power spike, and then you curve it into either defensive or offensive, depending on what you need. This is basically the build you want to go if they have a bunch of squishies. For example, 3 to 4 squishies, I will almost always go with this build. And yeah, moving on to the next build, it's going to be your standard on-hit build, which is Kraken, Guensus, And then you can play around where you want to build Bork. It kind of depends if they have a tank or not. You can build it first, you can build a second, you can build a third, or you cannot build it at all. It solely depends on whether they have a bunch of tanks. If they do have a bunch of tanks, slot it in somewhere. It doesn't really matter where. It's going to feel the same spike. And then you just finish it out with a bunch of on-hit items, like, for example, Wit's End, PD. You can actually go Nashers if you need more AP damage. This does play very well with Guinsoo's, and then Shield Bow if you need survivability. Anyways, like I said, it's a super quick itemization, just because we are not fully sure what is the best quite yet. We need more playtesting. The item changes came out like I think a month ago, and we're still very uncertain as to which is the best, but these are generally the two most staple, is what I'd say. That doesn't mean they're necessarily the best, but they are going to help you win games, and you can basically run these to every single game and you're going to do very, very well. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for me. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you found it useful, please smash the like button. Let me know down in the comments below what other guides you would like to see. Thank you all so much for watching to the end. Hope you all have a great rest of your day. Chen out.